Afterword. While the story of Jack Gruner is true and remarkable, this book is a work of fiction. As an author, I've taken some liberties with time and events to paint a fuller and more representative picture of the Holocaust as a whole. All this was done with Jack's blessing so that the horrors and realities of the Holocaust beyond those that he personally experienced would not be forgotten. Jack did, in fact, survive the harsh conditions of the Krakow ghetto by living in a pigeon coop with his parents. He baked bread under the cover of night with his aunt and uncle and his bar mitzvah in a basement, and watched his parents deported by the Nazis, never to see them alive again. At Plazow, Jack hid under the floorboards from Emmengoth and was inexplicably spared by the madman when he emerged. Even more incredibly, while Jack was at Plazow, he worked for a time at the very same enamel-ware factory where German businessman Oskar Schindler later saved hundreds of Jews from extermination. Schindler was able to protect the Jews who had worked there because Goethe made enough money off the factory to look the other way, but Jack was transferred away from Plazow a mere 3 months before Schindler began protecting his workers from the Nazis. Jack only learned how close he was to salvation years later when the true story of Schindler's List was told. Jack then went on to survive 9 more concentration camps. At Walzika, he toiled beside the famous salt statues that became a tourist attraction after the war. At Birkenau, he waited under the gas heads for death, only to be showered with cold water instead. At Auschwitz, Jack came face to face with the infamous Nazi monster Joseph Mengele and lived. Jack endured slavery and starvation, death marches and cattle cars, Allied bombings and Nazi beatings. Of the more than 1.5 million Jewish children living in Europe before the war, Jack was one of only 500,000 to survive. After the war, Jack immigrated to America and became an American citizen. Less than a year after he became a citizen, he was drafted into the U.S. Army and sent to Korea to fight the Korean War. There he survived again, this time with a gun in his hands and a pack on his back, all the while keeping up his promised correspondence with the Gamser family who had at last immigrated to America. When Jack's 2 years in the army were up, he came to visit the Gamsers in New York City. He discovered that little Lucia, the girl he had met in Munich who always sat in the corner reading a book, had grown up into a beautiful young woman. Jack fell in love with Lucia, who had since changed her name to Ruth, and in a few months they were married. Jack and Ruth now live in Brooklyn, New York. They have 2 grown sons and 4 grandchildren. Together, Jack and Ruth travel the country to speak about their experiences in the Holocaust. I had the pleasure of meeting Jack and Ruth while working on this book, and it is my honor to write about Jack's life so the generations that follow will never forget. Jack still bears a tattoo with the number the Nazis gave him, B3087, but it is his name, Jack Gruner, that lives on.